Sometimes you want to add extra information to your sentence. That is information that's considered additional to the information provided in the main sentence. When you add extra information to your sentence, this information must be enclosed between two dashes or two brackets or two commas. So whenever you have part of your sentence enclosed between a pair of any of these, this means that the information enclosed between them is extra or additional, and if you remove it from the sentence will still make sense. This type of sentences is called parenthetical sentences. Or, to be technically accurate, they are not sentences. This information enclosed between the two dashes or the two commas or whatever, they are not sentences technically. They are clauses or phrases. So if I want to be grammatically accurate or precise, I should call them parenthetical clauses or parenthetical phrases. But for the purpose and the sake of simplicity, I will call them, for the rest of the video, parenthetical sentences. So I needed to draw your attention to this all along from the beginning of the video. So parenthetical sentences, as I said, serve the purpose of adding extra information to your sentence. For example, the book, though quite lengthy, was incredibly engaging. The part of the sentence which is though quite lengthy can be enclosed between two dashes or two commas or two brackets because it's extra. If you remove it from the sentence will become the book was incredibly engaging, which is perfectly fine. It's a good sentence and it makes a lot of sense. Let me give you another example. The novel, which won several awards, is now out of print. If you notice, the parenthetical sentence here is a non-defining relative clause, which is one of the two types of relative clauses, and we discussed it thoroughly in a previous video that we published on the channel recently. So, the novel, which won several awards, is now out of print. The parenthetical sentence here is which won several awards. If you remove it from the sentence will still make sense and it becomes the novel is now out of print. Sometimes you need to add a name or a noun in a sentence. I'm talking here about a proper noun, not a common one, not a common noun. So sometimes you need to add a proper noun to your sentence in order to define the information before it. This is extra information, but it is not enclosed between two dashes or two commas. For example, you can say, my friend Jack has moved to Sweden. So Jack, as a proper name, it defines who my friend is. I said, my friend Jack has moved to Sweden. So Jack here is not placed between two commas or two dashes, although it is considered additional information because if you remove it, the sentence will become my friend has moved to Sweden, which makes perfect sense. You can also use the word namely or the phrase that is in order to add information about somebody or something. So namely, which is an adverb, and that is can be used in parenthetical sentences in order to add extra information to your sentence. I'll give you a couple of examples to highlight these two. You can say, for example, this side effect of the medicine, namely weight gain, is counteracted with other drugs. So the parenthetical sentence here is namely weight gain. So we added extra information with that parenthetical sentence in order to identify which side effect of the medicine we're talking about. That's weight gain. So the sentence says again, this side effect of the medicine, comma, or dash, namely weight gain, another comma, or another dash, is counteracted with other drugs. Let's have an example with that is, the main cause of global warming, that is the burning of fossil fuels, will be the focus of the negotiations at the international conference. So the parenthetical sentence here is, that is burning of fossil fuels. We can enclose this between two commas, two dashes, or between two brackets. So the sentence will be, the main cause of global warming, dash or comma, that is the burning of fossil fuels, another dash or another comma, will be the focus of negotiations at the international conference. So the point I was trying to make here is that you can add extra information in the form of parenthetical sentences using the adverb namely or the phrase that is. By the way, that is, although it contains the verb is, some people might think it has to be followed by a singular noun, but as a matter of fact, it can also be followed by a plural noun, not necessarily singular. For example, the consumers of education, that is, students, should have ways of complaining about poor teaching. So the parenthetical sentence here is, that is, students. So the sentence says, the consumers of education, comma, or dash, that is, students, as you can see, that is followed by a plural noun, students, another comma or another dash, should have ways of complaining about poor teaching. All right. What are other ways of adding extra information to sentences? We can add extra information to sentences via parenthetical sentences using a participle clause. Well, what is a participle clause? It's a clause that begins with a participle. A participle is an ing form of a verb or a past participle of a verb. So you can add extra information to your sentences using participle clauses. Let's take a couple of examples. The men wearing anoraks and hats made off in a stolen Volvo estate. So the participle clause here is wearing anoraks and hats. You can remove it and the sentence will make sense. If we take it out, it will be the men made off in a stolen Volvo estate. But we decided to include the participle clause because we think that this information is still important. So the sentence has become, the men, comma, wearing anoraks and hats made off in a stolen Volvo estate. This is a participle clause beginning with a present participle, which is the ing form of the verb, wearing anoraks and hats. Another example beginning with a past participle instead will be, the proposals expected to be discussed by ministers are less radical than many employers had feared. So the participle clause in this sentence is expected to be discussed by ministers. As you can see, it begins with a past participle, that's expected, and it's enclosed between two dashes or two commas. So the sentence is, the proposals, dash or comma, expected to be discussed by ministers, another dash or comma, are less radical than many employers had feared. You can remove the parenthetical sentence in the form of a participle clause here, and the sentence will become perfectly good. The proposals are less radical than many employers had feared. All right. Another way of adding extra information to your sentence is to use a to-infinitive clause. That's a clause which begins with a to-infinitive. You still enclose it between two dashes, two commas, or two brackets. For example, I believe that the decision of the committee to increase staff holidays was a good one. So the sentence without the to-infinitive clause will be perfectly good. It will say, I believe that the decision of the committee was a good one. But you added the to-infinitive clause to identify or to define what that decision was. So you said, I believe that the decision of the committee, comma, to increase staff holidays, another comma, was a good one. So you enclose the to-infinitive clause, which acts as a parenthetical sentence here. You enclose it between two dashes, two commas, or between two brackets. We mentioned in a previous video that non-defining relative clauses are considered type of parenthetical clauses because they add extra information to your sentence. But you can also make something which we call reduced relative clauses or reduced relative, and that's when we replace a defining or a restrictive relative clause with a participle clause. For example, you can say the people living next door come from Italy, rather than saying the people who are living next door come from Italy. So what happened here is that you remove the relative pronoun who, and you removed verb to be after it in the form of are, and you just used the rest of the relative clause, which is living next door. Another example, the boys being chosen for the team are under 9. So the original sentence was the boys who are being chosen, but you omitted the relative pronoun who and the verb to be which follows it. So the rule here of reduced relative clauses or reduced relatives is that whenever you have a relative pronoun followed by verb to be and then followed by a present participle, an ing form, or a past participle, you can change that defining relative clause or restrictive relative clause, you can change it into a reduced relative or a reduced relative clause by omitting the relative pronoun and verb to be after it, and just begin the new reduced relative clause with a present participle or a past participle according to the context of your sentence. So in today's video, we exhibited some of the ways of making parenthetical sentences, that is, sentences used to add extra information to your sentence, and which can be omitted from the sentence or taken out from the sentence without affecting the meaning, as the sentence will still make sense even after the omission of the parenthetical clause or phrase. I come here to the end of my video today, which I hope was helpful and beneficial for you. Thank you very much, my friends, for your attentive listening, and see you in our next episode. Enjoy the rest of your day, and goodbye for now.